My name is Gareth. You're watching the Hub Online Network. It is after the All Candidates Forum. We have Barbara Roden in the studio today. And not only that, but we are talking elections happening in the province of British Columbia. So let's get Now, just before we get completely started here, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the game shows that we have coming up at the Hub Online Network. So if you haven't already signed up and you want to, we have 3 games going on. On Saturday night, we have a game called Trade Up, which is kind of like Let's Make a Deal. So if you want to sign up for that one, you can win all sorts of physical and gift card prizes. Wednesday, I believe Wednesday is, which one, Family Feud or? Okay, so Wednesday is trivia. So it's kind of like Jeopardy, only you don't have to give the question. You actually just have to give the answer. And then Friday, we're doing COVID Bubble Battle, which is a facsimile of Family Feud. So if you want to sign up, you can go to ashcraftHub.com/perfectmind. No, not /perfectmind. It's just on the website. You can go there, sign up. If you want to participate in tomorrow's show, you got to sign up now. So we have $3,000 in prizes to give away, and they're all relatively good. And they're all from town. So, we're supporting local, so please sign up and get in and have some fun. Thank you. Now, Barbara, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Gareth?
Oh, I am. I'm not. I don't think I'm as tired as you are. I think you've been burning the midnight oil a little bit more than me. But yesterday was a long day.
Yesterday was a long day. Today's a long day. I think I'm just going to bring a camp bed down here and put it in a corner of the studio.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
We can call it Barbara's Cot.
No, it's been a couple of busy days, but no, last night's All Candidates Forum was, I think, really, really good. A lot of fun, very interesting.
So one thing that always happens when people talk about these things is who won. So who do you think came out a little bit ahead from where they were? Now, keeping in mind, we have had just shy of 900 people watch the debate now, or watch the forum, I should say. So quite a few people have watched it. We're not as many as the Hope standard yet, but we are bridging that gap quickly. So we're getting more views faster than the Hope standard did.
Okay.
I think that our forum was a little bit more fun.
Fun and All Candidates Forums are two things that don't often go together.
No?
But no, it was a lot of fun. We had all 5 of the candidates for Fraser-Nicola here last night,
Yep.
which was great. I think the format was really good. We brought it in 2 hours. Everyone had a chance to answer all the questions and give the viewers a sense of who they are, what they stand for, why they're running, and then do a wrap-up at the end. And I think we had a good range of questions. And that's the nice thing about these really localized All Candidates Forum is you can really drill down to the local level. I don't know how many people would have watched the leaders debate on Tuesday night, but of course that's very, very broad, very far-ranging. You're talking about British Columbia as a whole. And the localized forums give the candidates a chance to really answer questions about, in our case, the Ashcroft, Cache Creek, Clinton area of Fraser-Nicola.
Now, I must say to everybody that was watching, I apologize for the first probably 10 minutes of technical issues that we had. We were in a different room than what we are normally in. We weren't in the studio. We were down at the social center of the Hub, and we weren't used to the internet down there, let alone I was using a different soundboard than I would normally use. But we got through those glitches relatively quick. Thank you to everyone that called us out on those problems promptly and often. But we hope that now it should be up with no problems on both our YouTube channel and our Facebook page if you haven't seen it. But what do you think was one of the better questions in your opinion, and what do you think was a really good answer in your opinion?
I think there were some really good questions about a couple of really local issues. The Clinton senior housing was an interesting question and answer because housing of all sorts is a huge issue throughout the province, and the Clinton seniors is a good example of a great project. I mean, no one objects to seniors housing, But from the time they formed the society in Clinton to the time when shovels went in the ground was 9 years. That's a long time to wait for any kind of housing, especially seniors housing. So I think they all I think they all acknowledged the fact that there was an issue there and that something had to be done. You have to expedite that process.
Right.
It was interesting to hear sort of the high-level party talk coming from local candidates. Because, of course, we've heard Mr. Horgan, Mr. Wilkinson, Sonia Furstenau talk, as leaders, and it's interesting to see how that filters down to the individual candidates on the ground. So they all have their talking points, I get that. That's part of the way it works. But one answer that impressed me was independent candidate Dennis Adamson. There was a question to everyone about the Ashcroft Slough Society and the Ashcroft Slough. And when you're faced with a question that you have no idea is coming, because none of the candidates knew what was going to be asked, they can kind of guess that I'll probably be asked about A, B, and C. But then you get a question about X. And so you've got two choices. You either bluff your way through or you say, I don't know. And some people don't like to say, I don't know, because they think it makes them look weak. I don't think there's any harm in saying, if you truly don't know, no, I don't know the answer to that, but thank you for bringing it to my attention, and I will go and find out some information and, learn more about this issue, which I clearly have to learn more about. And that's pretty much what he said, and I thought that was a good answer, and it was honest.
He was particularly an interesting person that was there for the fact of, and so throughout the whole night, he sort of stumbled and stammered a little bit, and then he called himself out on it later. He apologized for the fact that he wasn't very articulate, but he had, good things to say. So that was sort of a humbling thing for a politician to say, which was something different.
It was, and not everyone's a polished public speaker, and these things are nerve-wracking. I mean, it is live. As I said, you don't know all the questions that you're going to be asked. You can do a certain amount of preparation, thinking I'll probably get asked about this, but you don't know. And on the night with the cameras rolling and the microphone live and the lights and everything, it is intimidating and it is kind of scary. And people make mistakes and they stumble where normally if they were just talking one-on-one to you or to me or anyone else, they'd be fine. But it's a very artificial setting and a lot of people feel very uncomfortable in it.
One interesting thing that people have said to me throughout the day, probably 2 or 3 people that I've talked to about this, all 3 of the party people, so Aaron, Jonah, and Jackie, all said that their party does not whip the votes. And by whipping the votes, I mean, for people that may not know political jargon, is when there's something that comes up in a political party, if you don't necessarily agree with that, there's a person that will come in and talk you into touting the party line, essentially. All 3 parties said that they don't do that. They all vote sort of their conscience. And then other people come out and say, well, no, those parties are specifically built to be party line people. So it's hard to tell you're hoping that the candidates are telling the truth and they are voting on how they feel it'll affect the riding. But how do you know?
You don't. And I mean, unfortunately for the more established parties, they do have a tradition of having a whip. They do have a tradition of you vote the party line, which is why when we ended up with the situation we did in 2017, where you had the Liberals and the NDP with only, I think it was a seat or 2 between them, that was why it was so important to find out where the 3 Green Party MLAs would go to, because the assumption is that all of the Liberals are going to vote the Liberal line, and all the NDPs are going to vote the NDP line on any given question. None of them are going to break ranks, and it's very rare to see that happen. As far as I've been able to tell, the only party that says it and seems to do it is the Green Party, but then we've never had a Green Party where they've had 20 or 30 or 40 MLAs or MPs. When it's 1 or 2 or 3 people, that's one thing. When you've suddenly got 30 MLAs for your party, are you going to have a whip? Are you going to make it known that they need to vote a certain way? I don't know.
You think it'd be easier to control 3 people opposed to 20 or 30 people?
I actually think it's easier to let 3 people vote their conscience and say, you know, vote their conscience and the wishes of the people in their riding.
After the fact, I sat down with independent candidate Mike Bangu, and it was late, and I think that he was a little bit tired after a very long forum, but we had a pretty interesting conversation. He had mentioned how he writes nonfiction novels about his political, not agenda, but political background and theology. So it was a pretty interesting conversation. I also sat down with Jonah Timms and Jackie Taggart yesterday afternoon. I was fairly awed by Jonah specifically because he's only 26, and he's not the youngest person running in the whole scheme of things. There's an 18 or 19-year-old person on the island.
Yeah.
So it's really good to see all these young people come out. And even in the interview, and the interviews will be up tomorrow, but he even talks about the fact that he's going after my own heart. He plays video games and tabletop games, so that's pretty sweet.
Well, when I met him before the forum last night, and I did ask how old he was, so I hope you don't mind my asking. He said 26 because he'd mentioned that he'd been in Ashcroft playing basketball for the Clearwater High School team. So that's why I asked him how old he was, and when he said 26, I said, well, you probably ran across my son, who was the manager of the Ashcroft senior boys basketball team, who's 3 years younger, but they probably would have crossed paths. And I came away thinking, wow, when you've got candidates who are about the same age as your own son, that makes you feel very old all of a sudden.
I am hoping to sit down with, I think Aaron's going to get a hold of me via some video chat way to do an interview, and Dennis, I think, is going to come back in. I think Mike wants to redo his, which is fair. It was late. But in because for people that don't know, Barbara also is the editor of our local newspaper, the Ashcroft Cache Creek Journal. If you haven't checked that out, please do. But in your sort of millions around the candidates, has there been any interesting things that have stuck in your brain about anyone?
No, I mean, I know Jackie Taggart. I've spoken with and met Aaron Shumahetsa a few times when he threw his hat in the ring to be the nominee in 2017 in Fraser-Nicola and lost to Harry Lally. Jonah, I don't know. Mike Bangu, I didn't know. Dennis Adamson, I didn't know. So I'm meeting all 3 of those men for the first time.
Well, I thought that you had done some kind of an article about everybody.
What we did is we sent questions. We sent the same 6 questions to everyone, all 5 of the candidates, and told them they had 500 words to answer the questions. And so those all ran in the paper this week. But I didn't actually speak with them. I sent them the questions via email. Right. So all the correspondence back and forth was by email. So last night was my first time meeting 2 of the candidates. Yeah.
Another thing that I thought was interesting about last night's forum was, so we had a person there keeping score of time. And a lot of the answers were given before the time was even up, which in my experience, typically politicians will use their time and then some. And everybody was pretty respectful of trying to be concise, which was nice.
That was really good. No one ran over the time. I mean, I think there might have been the odd person who occasionally went, 2 seconds over, 3 seconds over, but that was it. And I think it
was probably the moderator.
No, the moderator was great. I mean, the moderator had a yellow sign and a red sign, and so the yellow sign came up with 15 seconds to go. And so people are looking up at the camera, and they could see the moderator, Jessica, in the background. And so that you can, if they pause about 15 seconds from the end, that's because they've just seen that yellow sign, and it does make you kind of stop, because as you're speaking, it's going through your head, oh, I have to wrap up because I've only got 15 seconds. But people were respectful. But no, some of the answers were 25 seconds, 30 seconds, and that's good. They said what they wanted to say, and then they stopped.
We had a few people ask us to keep, we had planned for the forum to be 3 hours initially, and we did have a couple of people go, oh, 3 hours, that's a pretty long go. I would have kept those people in the seat for 4 hours if I could. but we got it done in just over 2, which I think is almost half an hour longer than the one that they did in Hope, I think.
I think so. I think the one in Hope went about 90 minutes.
Yeah, so not that I'm comparing ourselves to Hope, but I'm comparing ourselves to Hope.
Okay. We're beyond Hope.
Oh.
Someone had to say it.
Now overall, so now let's maybe move away from the local thing. What are some of the bigger party plans that you find to be interesting or lack thereof?
The PST one is interesting, and there was a very good question last night about support for businesses to have to retool their cash machines and et cetera, because of course they are all calculated now, so that when you ring in a sale, if there's PST applicable, it just automatically is added. You don't have to do a separate step on the machine. And so to get that changed so that you do not account for the PST means someone has to change it, either manually or if I don't know by computer if it's that way hooked up. But it is a cost to business, and every time the taxes change like that, you do hear businesses complaining that they're bearing the cost of having to make this adjustment. And Mr. Wilkinson's plan is to eliminate PST completely for a year, and then when it comes back, only bring it back for 2%, I believe.
I think it's 3.
Or 3%, but he hasn't said how long it will be at 3% before it goes up again. So now you're looking at changing your machines to take it off, changing your machines to put it back to 3%, and then at some unspecified time in the future having to change it again to increase it or whatever they decide to do with it. So that's one of those hidden costs that when you start digging beneath the surface of some of these promises, you think, oh, well, hang on a sec, have they thought about this? So I mean, it's an interesting thought. I mean, people have said that, well, it's only going to benefit people buying yachts or something, some big ticket high-end item. And you don't pay PST on your groceries, for example. You don't pay PST on school supplies. But there are a lot of everyday things you do pay PST on. And so, it's going to save the average person money, definitely. But it's not going to be a huge sum unless you're buying a yacht. It's going to be 50 cents here, $2 there. Now you have to decide in your own mind over the course of a year, is that going to be enough to make a difference to me?
Right.
So.
Well, my grandfather always said, $1 in your pocket is better than $1 in the government's pocket.
Yeah.
So.
And I suppose the theory is that obviously that's you're cutting taxes, whichever way you look at it. You're cutting taxes. So then the thinking is, well, how are they going to make that money up? And something that I've always been told is, if you're not paying taxes, what are you not getting for those taxes you're not paying? Meaning taxes go to fund all those nice services that governments provide. So if you're not paying those taxes, government doesn't have that money. So where are they making the cuts?
Well, that's just it. None of these platforms, and especially the Liberal platform, when Gordon Campbell came in back in the early 2000s?
2001.
Yeah, he came in and he cut all sorts of stuff. There were all a bunch of protests on in Victoria. But in the platform, they don't say what they're going to get rid of. They only say the things that they're going to do. And
That's right.
It's an interesting dichotomy of what you're saying.
Yeah.
What are they going to take away to make up for the fact that there's no PST?
Yeah. Well, I was listening to an interview with George Abbott, the former Liberal MLA, who is a very nice man. I've been fortunate enough to meet him a few times, very nonpartisan. And he can especially say that now that he's not in government anymore. But he was a minister under Gordon Campbell, and they said that they were going to make these huge tax cuts. And then the word came down, and the 3 ministries that they would not touch were health, education, and one other that were off the table. They went to all the other ministries and said, you have to find savings of 23%, 25%. So basically, whatever your budget is, you have to axe a quarter of it. And the ministry that Abbott was in charge of was the Ministry of Children and Family Development. And he said, that ministry by its nature is dealing with very sensitive cases of people who need a lot of assistance. Where do you find 25% cuts in that? So that's the flip side of the tax cuts, is it's got to come from somewhere.
Yep. Let's move on to an NDP one. What do you think is the most interesting promise that the NDP is making for this particular election?
Well, it's nice to see $10 a daycare coming back. They promised it in 2017, and here it is back again in 2020. They haven't moved forward very far with that one, and $10 a day daycare does sound great, especially if you're a parent with young children. But
sorry, I'm confused about this. So what do you mean by $10 a day daycare? Is that it costs you $10 a day, or the government gives you $10 a day?
It costs you $10 a day. The government will subsidize daycare spots so that you, the parent who has a child going into daycare, will pay $10 a day. So if you figure that's 5 days a week for 4 weeks in a month, so you're paying $210, $220 a month, depending on how many weekdays there are. And you hear stories about parents who, if they can find a daycare space, are paying more in daycare than they're paying for a mortgage.
Right.
Which is why a lot of new parents have that dilemma. Is it more cost effective for one parent to keep working and pay daycare, or for one parent to stop working and lose that income, but then you're not paying the daycare? Right. So that's huge for a lot of working parents. And $10 a day daycare was a central part of the NDP platform in 2017, and it's a central part of their platform in 2020, which shows that it's not as easy to do as they thought, or it's a lot more expensive than they thought, or it sounded great on paper and then kind of got pushed to the edge of someone's desk. Who knows? So that's an interesting one. And then the $1,000 one-time payment to families, $500 one-time payment to single people. The timing is interesting, to say the least.
Now, is that, when I first read that, I thought, my understanding was it was only for people that were affected by COVID. So, but it's
No.
for everybody.
It's for everyone. It is means tested. If your family makes above, and I think it's $120,000 a year, I don't think you get it, the $1,000, or you don't get as much. So it is scaled. It doesn't go to absolutely everyone. I mean, one that's interesting for the Liberals is the promise to open up car insurance. Yeah. Now, and they're saying we're not going to scrap ICBC. ICBC can stay and offer what it offers, but we want to open it up to competition from other insurers. So if people shop around and they go, ICBC is giving me the best deal, they'll stay with ICBC. If they think they can, or they can get another better deal elsewhere, they'll go to, XYZ insurers or whoever they go with. So that's interesting, because ICBC, even though it was an NDP innovation back in 1972-3 under the Dave Barrett government, it's one of those things that's just hung on. It's almost been like a sacred cow. You can't touch ICBC, and it's just interesting. This is the first time I can think of that one political party has actually seriously floated the idea of opening the car insurance market in BC up to competition.
Yeah, no, that one to me sounds like a very big promise.
Mm-hmm.
It would be nice to not just be beholden to ICBC. Mm-hmm. Just to go back to the $500 or $1,000 payout thing. A lot of people are suggesting that money is, hey, you vote for me, I'll give you $1,000, $500, whatever it is. Do you get the feeling that it's a bribe, or is it just a typical campaign strategy?
Well, I did say a few minutes ago that the timing was interesting. I think it is. That's one of the perks of being the party in power. I mean, I suppose the Liberals could promise, if you elect us, this is what we'll do. It's a little bit easier for the party in power to do. I'd say the timing is a little suspect, just as the timing is suspect. For months now, people have been pushing the government and ICBC to give rebates to drivers, as has happened in many other provinces that have competition. People weren't driving as much during COVID. There weren't nearly as many cars on the road, so there were far fewer accidents and claims. And so the insurance companies were making a bit of extra money because they're still taking in money. Now, some people canceled their insurance or put it on hold because they weren't going to work, but they still made a nice little windfall. And the NDP government has been holding out giving rebates, and they then came out and said, well, we'll look at it sometime next year. And people said, oh, well, sometime next year, there's an election in October of 2021, so maybe that's why they're holding off. And then there was a snap election for October of this year, and then suddenly they said, yes, we're going to be giving rebates.
In retrospect, one of the questions that I wished we had asked was to everybody, did you start planning to run before the election was called, or were you blindsided by it and said, I need to do something about this? I didn't get the sense as to one way or another with the candidates, but thinking about it, that would have been an interesting answer.
Yeah.
But
I think that, well, the NDP, again, I don't know. The NDP lost a few high-profile candidates who announced that they would not be running in the next election. Now, they announced it pretty close to John Horgan calling this election. So that meant that they had to scramble to find NDP candidates for those ridings because the incumbents were saying, no, next time there's an election, we're not running anymore. That had happened with the Liberals as well. The Greens, I think, did have to scramble. They do not have candidates in all 87 ridings. There are a few that don't have Greens because they couldn't complete their vetting process in time. You had to file your papers by the 30th of September, so they just didn't get enough candidates or enough credible candidates, or they felt they couldn't vet them properly by the 30th of September. And I think for anyone who wanted to run as an independent, I think there was a fair bit of scrambling. And in fact, the Elections BC website, which I was checking to see what the final list of candidates for Fraser-Nicola looked at, on Friday the 30th on the 30th of September, it said, due to the high volume of filing at the last minute, basically, we will not have the final results until tomorrow.
Right.
So they were busy going through and checking.
Jessica isn't on microphone, but I'm just going to ask her a quick question. Wasn't there somebody from Elections BC sniffing around for a spot to hold the polls, like months ago? I thought there was somebody that came in here. No? I'm wrong in that? Okay. I'm misinformed. I'm sorry.
Well, it's left Elections BC scrambling not only for spots to hold elections, because in a lot of ridings it's traditionally schools where you've held the polling, and you can't use schools now, not while they're in session anyway. And also getting people to man the elections or staff the elections. A lot of people who do this, do it every election. They see it as a civic duty. So they come out and they do the advanced polls. They do the election day. They're long days. You're there from 7 in the morning till past 8 o'clock at night. So they're very long days. A lot of the people who do that are retired people. And of course, with COVID-19, a lot of older people are a bit wary of being in a situation where you're sitting there for 12, 14 hours with a constant stream of strangers coming up to you and getting close. So Elections BC, I think, has had a tough time finding enough people just to basically allow them to physically carry out the elections.
I think I would have done it if I wasn't doing this job.
Mm-hmm.
I want to do it one time in my life, just to be part of the process.
I've worked all 3 levels of election. I've done a municipal election, a federal election, and a provincial election.
We can't hear you, Jessica.
My son's done too. He did a provincial and federal, and he enjoyed it. He said it was a very interesting process. He's always been interested in sort of the whole political thing, and so it's a good behind the scenes look. And of course, if you're doing it on election day, you're doing the counting as well. So you're the first person to sort of get a sense of how things are going. Here in Ashcroft, it's a very small sense, obviously, because we're a very small part of either the federal or provincial ridings. But you're still there, and it is exciting. If you're interested in politics, you're there right as it's happening.
Do you have a lot of people talking to you about the election?
If I had $1 for everyone who's been talking to me about the election, I'd have no money.
Really?
Really? No, actually, no, not quite.
Everywhere I go, I get, not inundated with people, but typically I go into a building and one person talks to me about it.
I've had a couple of people ask me in the last couple of days, how do I think it's going to go in Fraser-Nicola? That's now kind of the question. But up until then, no, I think a lot of people were actually, frankly, a little bit stunned. It all happened so fast. Usually with a fixed election date, the whole point of a fixed election date is everyone knows when the election's going to be. So you mentally prepare for that. And this happened so fast that it just took everyone by surprise. And so people are now suddenly looking and saying, today's Friday, so a week tomorrow. But the thing about this election is we probably won't know a week tomorrow we might not know who forms the next government, which is going to be really strange because we're used to, on election day, polls close, you start getting the advance results. By the time you go to bed, you know who your next premier or your next prime minister is. We might not know that on the 24th.
Well, I hate saying what I think, but I just wish it has to be done. That's the day.
Mm-hmm.
Unless there has to be a recount of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
Ballots done in 24th over, we know.
And that's the thing. Usually we would. Last election, they got 6,500 mail-in ballots. So far this year, and I think today is the last day you can actually apply. So if you want to apply to get a mail-in ballot package, you better get out there and do it right now. They've had 700,000 mail-in ballot packages requested. Now, all 700,000 of those people are not going to mail back in their ballots, but a lot more than 6,500 are going to. And it's going to take a long time to count those. And, with 6,500 ballots spread across 87 ridings, no, it's probably not going to change anything. If you're talking 500,000 or 600,000 ballots over 87 ridings, if there's a close finish on the night, those mail-in ballots could decide it one way or the other. They could tip the balance and someone might go to bed on the 24th thinking they've won their riding, and then the mail-in ballots are counted and they didn't.
Right.
So.
You've been around the campaign block a few times. You kind of know what you're talking about, I think. Do you have any predictions as to how you think this is going to go?
In Fraser-Nicola, or
like if you had to, let's say, if you had to put $20 on Fraser-Nicola and $20 on the province.
Okay, I'm going to say this, and everyone's going to realize on the 24th or within a couple of weeks why I don't gamble. Okay, province-wide, I'm going to put my money on the NDP.
Okay.
I just think, and I don't know that it's going to be a blowout, but I'm going to put my money on the NDP. In Fraser-Nicola, they're not calling this a swing riding for no reason. I would not be surprised if Jackie Taggart won her third term. But I don't know. I mean, in the past, she's defeated NDP candidate Harry Lally. Harry, you loved him or you hated him. There was very little middle ground with Harry. So he's not a factor this time. It's Aaron Schumahetsa for the NDP party. I don't know how many people voted for Harry Lally because Harry'd been around he was a cabinet minister in the 1998 to 2001 NDP government. He was Minister of Transportation. So he'd been around for a long time. He had a lot of name recognition. And name recognition goes a long way. Mm-hmm. So, the two independent candidates, it's a really brave move to run as an independent. Because the same thing that's a positive, you're not beholden to any party, is a negative. You don't belong.
An independent whip?
Nope.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. It's called herding cats. But no, I mean, independent, you don't have a party to back you up. You don't have that support. So how effective can you be? So, and the Green Party, I don't know. There were 3 Green MLAs in the last election. Will the people who voted for them in those 3 ridings decide it was an experiment gone wrong? Will more people have looked at it and said, it's nice to have a third party to maybe hold the other 2 to account, to hold that balance of power, but then again, will people be turned off because they feel the Greens sold out? They sold their soul with the confidence and supply agreement with the NDP. there's just so much at play. And when it comes, down to the bottom line, sometimes people just vote the way they vote because it's a whim. They like this candidate's smile the best. They thought this candidate was the most friendly. This is the one they want to have a beer with.
Well, that being said, we're still a week away from the election being done. Now, people can go in Ashcroft as of tomorrow
Yes.
and do advanced polling,
Mm-hmm.
or advanced voting. But with another week to go, in the last week and a half, 2 weeks, there's been a lot of controversy.
Yeah.
And a lot of, I think one Liberal MLA or candidate dropped out in Chilliwack. I
Chilliwack,
wanna
Kent,
say.
yeah.
Do you think there's going to be more of this? I mean, we sort of live in this, call out culture.
Mm-hmm.
So as people say anything, someone might find offensive, even if it is or not, they might get called out on it.
I think, I mean, the old saying is a week is a long time in politics, meaning anything can happen, come out of nowhere. I mean, in the States, they talk about in U.S. elections, because their elections are always in November, they talk about the October surprise, which could be a good surprise, it could be a bad surprise, but something big happening in October that changes the course of an election or changes the course of one party's fortunes. That, as you say, that's happened a couple of times in the past week with the Liberal Party. Are there more skeletons to come out? Are there more controversies that are going to flare up? Who knows? You have to hope for the party's sake that there aren't, because the last thing the leader of any party wants to be doing 9 days out from an election is putting out fires. You should have all this sorted out, and you should be focusing on, your policies, your platform, your campaign. Every place you stop now, you're going to be asked about the latest controversy, and you can't afford to waste your time on that.
Is there anything else you'd like to say about the election itself?
Just that it's going to be really interesting. I mean, 2017 was interesting. I don't think anyone really saw that coming with that result and it dragging on for weeks before we knew who was forming the government. I mean, British Columbia has a reputation for having really crazy provincial politics. We had a premier who lived in a castle. We had another prominent politician who renamed himself Amour de Cosmos, lover of the cosmos. We never fail to entertain the rest of Canada, and it's holding true this time. So it's always interesting to live through BC politics. It would be kind of interesting in 30 years or so to read the books that are being written about this time period, with that distance where you can look back now and see where all the dust settled and how it all panned out. Because right now we don't know, how it's going to pan out. We're living through history. Are we going to get a chance to read about it? Or is living through it enough? Would we even want to read about it? I don't know.
Well, Barbara and I are going to be doing a live stream on election night, starting, I think, half an hour before polls close. So 7:30 until we kind of have an idea.
Until we fall asleep,
So we might just be sitting there for a couple of weeks. Because
so you're telling me to bring that camp bed after all, aren't you?
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Barbara's
good.
caught.
Good to know.
Nobody puts Barbara in a corner.
Exactly. I'll bring my blankie, a couple of stuffies. Yeah, you bet.
So watch out for that. Now we're going to talk. Now I'm sorry I don't have my computer in front of me. I'm going to go a little bit old tech here. Not old tech because it's a smartphone. But we're just going to talk about things happening in Ashcroft briefly. Based off of, finally you guys updated your Facebook page. Thank you, Amy. I'm assuming it was Amy that finally caught things back up, because I was sitting here for 2 weeks since September 23rd waiting for things to repopulate on Facebook.
Starved of information.
So, special yard waste pickup.
Yes.
When is that happening, Barbara?
That is happening on the, 28th and 29th. And this year, there's a change. Usually we have people phone the village office and you say, I will have a load of whatever it is to be picked up, and then you will bundle it neatly and put it out on the, in front of your house. And this year, because we were getting so many calls, we just have said to people, all right, if you've got stuff you want taken away on the 28th and 29th, just put it in front of your house and someone will drive past, because, you know, the village crew are great. They know, you know, they travel up and down all the roads every day, so they'll see things. They just don't want you to put it out like right now.
You mean like, this isn't like a spring cleanup where you can put couches and stuff on?
No, this is only things that can be taken to the transfer station, and like yard waste is the big one. So if you've got yard waste, you've been out trimming those mugo pines or whatever it is you've been doing, chopping down a couple of trees, then just put it out front and it will magically disappear.
Awesome. No, I won't say that one.
No.
Okay, so next up we got Desert Sands Community School call for participants. This says for community members to be virtually interviewed about their first-hand experience of the 2017 Elephant Hill wildfires. So this is a pretty lengthy thing, but I'm going to let you paraphrase what that is about.
I don't know, because that's Desert Sands. That's Desert Sands Community School.
But why? Okay.
We probably shared it on our page.
Oh, I thought that you guys were involved with this. I will read it on Tuesday. I'll get more informed and read it on Tuesday. That sounds moderately interesting. What else we got here? We have for more information on October 24th, the regional elections. We already talked about that. October 2020 marks the 30th anniversary for Foster Family Month in BC. So that's, if you are a foster parent, keep fighting a good fight. And yeah, I have.
They've made some changes in recent years to the foster program, and made it a lot easier for people to find out more information and to apply. So I know that that's something that they were keen to promote. I think that was about 2 or 3 years ago. And usually we only get that notification. We get it in October, and we usually only have one council meeting a month. So, and it's right at the end of the month. So it's too late to really call it Foster Family Month, because it's the 28th of October by then. So this year we had a council meeting in the middle of the month, so we were able to do that, which is great to get the word out and promote it.
Let's talk COVID for a few minutes. So looking at the BC government Facebook page here, we have, so last weekend we had 549 cases over the weekend.
That was 4 days though. That was a long weekend. Still, yeah, it's creeping up there.
When all of this started, we shut everything down for 40 cases a day. So I am not complaining that we're not shut back down. I'm just saying it's an interesting flip.
Yeah.
Tuesday to Wednesday, we had 158 new cases. Wednesday to Thursday, we had 142 new cases, and then today the new numbers have just come out at 155. A week and a half ago we were sitting typically at 100 to 110. Now we're consistently hitting the 150.
Yep.
As a mayor, as a journalist, do you, because you wear a lot of hats, sometimes you just can't avoid wearing too many hats in a small town. Thoughts on the fact that it just keeps going up? And yet, we're still a low number in compared to other provinces.
Well, I mean, we're certainly low compared to Quebec and Ontario, which of course have much larger populations than BC does. We have 4.5 million. But we're lower than Manitoba, which has a substantially lower population than we do. So I think I'd say that overall we're doing well at controlling outbreaks. But I think that what's happening is people are getting a little bit lax, and the kids are back in school, more people are going back to work now, we're indoors now, as opposed to being over the summertime when lots of people were outside. You were able to, if you wanted to have an event with, you know, even if you only wanted to have an event with 5 or 6 people, you could have it outside, lots of room. Well, now the weather's turning bad and it's getting colder out there, so people are doing these things inside. And you know, I don't know about you, are you washing your hands and sanitizing them as much now in October as you were in March, April? That would be a no. So you know, we've kind of got complacent. We've heard Dr. Bonnie Henry talk a lot about that. And I think we just have to be vigilant. And I feel for the health officials who are trying to walk a very fine line between being all dire and wagging their finger at people, because that just turns people off, and being too soft. And it's finding that balance, and it's convincing people that we have to keep doing this. I think the numbers were bound to increase. I think we are keeping them in check. It's not going to take too much for them to explode, but it's not going to take too much to keep them where they are. And it's the R number, the reproductive number, is that?
The R naught?
The R, that you have to, how many people are being infected by each person who has COVID-19.
Right.
So, that seems to be the number that Dr. Henry is keeping an eye on, a keen eye on. Because you don't want that.
Right now we're at 1.
Mm-hmm.
And if we go to 1.3 or 1.5, then we got a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yep.
one thing that isn't being spoken about in the elections necessarily is COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
It's not any kind of campaign promise that anybody's really talking about too much, other than the fact that it's just sort of happening.
Mm-hmm.
Am I wrong in that? Have you noticed anything where they're going to get vaccines or bring more
No.
testing in or anything like that? It's all pretty standard.
It's pretty standard. I mean, I think, any politician who promises that there will be a vaccine by X date, or that they or their government or their agencies will find a vaccine is flat on lying to you, because they don't know. They're not an epidemiologist. They're not a virologist. They're not a health expert. That is something...
Wilkinson is.
Wilkinson is a doctor, I'll grant you, but he's not that kind of a doctor. It's like saying, you're a doctor. Yeah, I've got a PhD in comparative literature. All right, well, why?
My knee hurts.
Exactly. Why have we booked you on to talk about COVID-19? So beware of that, because these things are beyond anyone's control, and I think to their credit, the politicians here in BC have realized that there is nothing they can do to speed up a vaccine for COVID-19. There's really very little they can do even to convince people to go out and get their flu shots. So they're leaving that to the health professionals who do this for a living and who study this for a living. So the thing about COVID-19 that I'm not hearing is, we are running a record deficit
Right.
of the numbers that would make your eyes water. And at some point, government, whoever happens to be in power, is going to have to start thinking about how do we start paying that, how do we start paying that bill when the chickens come home to roost? You can't just keep, there was one point a few days ago where the politicians were, on the evening news, it was, well, the Liberals have promised this and the Greens have promised that and the NDP's promised that. And I said, what's the next promise they can possibly make? They're going to pay off everyone's mortgage? That's the only thing left I can think of, because they're promising to pay so much else.
I don't have a mortgage, but you can just give me the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
That's right. I wanted to have a mortgage on a really nice place in Caristale, so could you pay me that money, please? Yeah.
I think that's pretty much what I got today. Is there anything else that you would
Okay.
like to double down on? Or?
Double down on the mail-in voting. That's the thing about mail-in voting is, I don't know if it's registered, the complete lack of any kind of panic about mail-in voting fraud. How the election is going to be fraudulent, that it's going to be stolen because of all these mail-in ballots. And that's just what I love about Canadians, is that we're just so kind of, mail-in ballots, it's fine. It is what it is. It'll work. We'll make it work. It'll be cool. There's none of the hysteria that you're seeing in the States about, oh my goodness, mail-in ballots. It's the end of civilization as we know it. It's refreshing, is what it is. Jessica's doing semaphore here in the background for those of you who...
I do have something else. Now, unfortunately, I couldn't get the video done before our show today, but at 2 o'clock I went and saw the Tim Hortons check being handed over. So they had a big novelty check with a big smiley cookie on it. I did take some pictures for you, Barbara, for the paper.
Thank you. I couldn't be there. I was at a TNRD meeting in Kamloops.
I need to get better at taking pictures on this phone. It's really weird. This phone, when you're looking at it, you can see everybody, but there's a cutoff on one side where the button is, but I thought that it would still take the picture on the whole screen. So unfortunately, I have a third of Damien cut out. And on the side where Sue's standing, there's that amount of space on the other side of Sue.
Okay,
So anyway, I'll send you those pictures.
thank you.
Anyway, but it was pretty awesome. The Lions Club, for everybody that doesn't know, held a smiley face cookie charity drive in town, and they made just over $5,000, and they gave the money to 3 groups. They gave it to the Equality Project, E-Fry, and Esther Lang's
The Christmas Hamper Committee.
Thank you, the Christmas hamper. So they gave each group $1,750 based off of the amount of money that they got from the cookies.
Yep.
Did they sell their cookies, or did Damien have cookies for dinner for a week?
My understanding is they did not sell every cookie that they brought in. They did order in 4,900 cookies, and the reason that they got over $5,000, it was $5,400.
They made about 4,800, but the Lions topped it up
Yeah,
so that they could give 1,750 to each of the 3 groups. So they made up the difference.
right. So Damien, I don't think he had to necessarily eat the cookies, but I believe that the deal was that he would eat the remainders.
Mm-hmm.
So he might have dinner for a few weeks, or at least dessert.
That's why he was brushing the crumbs off his shirt the last time I saw him. Okay, got it. No, that was great, and I know that the Lions were a little bit concerned about this year because they had to be outside instead of inside, and you know, trying to get the message out about the Smile Cookies. Last year when they did it for Robert Bellin, young Ashcroft fellow who needed new hearing aids, the Lions had bought Robert his first set when he was about 6, and he outgrew them because, of course, he gets older and you know, your body changes, so he needed new hearing aids. And so they just hoped to raise about $1,500, $2,000 to buy him new hearing aids. And they not only raised enough to buy Robert new hearing aids, but they raised enough to put enough money aside for his next set of hearing aids when he's 18 and donate $2,000 to the Sea Cadets, which Robert's a member of. So that was just, I mean, that was $6,000 last year. And I think they were worried that they would fall really short of that. And I think to come, you know, just under 5,000 this year, I think was amazing. And, you know, thanks to all the support to all the local businesses, Ashcroft Terminal and Aero Transport and RBC and Interior Savings Credit Union and all the local businesses, Home Hardware, that came up and bought boxes and boxes of cookies. There were Smile cookies everywhere in Ashcroft and Cache Creek for a week or so there. It was great.
I heard that the Journal got 25% of the amount of cookies sold.
That's a vicious lie. I might have had one of the cookies, or okay, maybe two, or possibly 3 a day. When the last one went, I was sad. I kind of picked up the box and shook it, and there were a few crumbs left in it. And I really, they were nice.
So, is that it? All right. So remember, everybody, to sign up for the game shows. Thank you, Barbara, for being here. Let's name somebody in town.
Let's name somebody in town. Steve Anderson.
Steve Anderson, if you're watching, wherever you are, we hope you're having a fantastic day. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you on Tuesday. Have a safe weekend. See you later.